So welcome back, everybody, to HR Leadership Coffee Talk. And today we're going to talk about returning to office, the vax, no vax, the whole vaccine controversy that's going on. And then we're also going to share some hybrid meeting tips for those of us who are doing events with some people in person in your meeting room, and then other people who are still remotely logging in and will be remotely logging in for the foreseeable future. So as a quick introduction, again, I am Daya Naef. I'm a professional coach. I am a certified mediator. I have 16 years in law practice, especially as general counsel and in the construction arena. And Edgar, will you introduce yourself?
Hi again, everyone. I'm Edgar Jatu. I'm a consultant, primarily in HR, also a nonprofit professional, problem solver, and workers' rights advocate. And I am the principal at Afikium LLC.
So what we're covering today applies to new and developed companies with or anticipating employees, managers who are concerned with the safe back to office policies, workers and employees handling the vaccine issue, and really everyone. I mean, I think it's really the top of everybody's mind, and those running hybrid meetings. And Edgar, will you lead us off with some of the best practices for returning to office?
I think I would say that number one is following your local and or federal guidelines when it comes to returning back to the office, and that might look differently for different types of employers and industries. So you definitely want to see what the government says, whether it's at the local or federal level, and know what your industry says is the best practice as well, in returning back to work or returning back to the office. The other thing I would say is that it's important to have policies in place that are in writing to help implement what you want to do. I think having written policies not only will help with communicating expectations to returning employees, but also provide a guidepost so you can help you address any issues that might come up. Uh, so, so it'd be very important to do that before you start having people come back to the office. And third, I would say is I think it's important to get have employees contribute to the conversation before you decide on anything. You know, you might want to take a litmus test, for example, to see when employees want to return back. Maybe it's not going to be before Memorial Day because your employees might feel that it's too soon to do that, or they might have other considerations that are affecting their ability to commit to such a timeline. So maybe it has to be later in the summer or after Labor Day, for example, that people start returning back to the office. Other things you want to consider when talking to your employees is, you know, making sure that whatever policies and procedures put in place, they feel safe. If you don't feel safe, then you're not going to have the productivity you're looking for, and it could lead to low employee morale. So you want to also make sure that whatever things you come up with, they have a hand um, in giving feedback because they ultimately have to feel safe and comfortable coming back to the office.
Yeah, as you were mentioning that timeline for coming back with Memorial Day and Labor Day, it sounds like historically we run on the academic schedule about kids coming back and putting kids in school or taking kids back out of school. How are you seeing people? How are you seeing employers, for lack of a better word, juggle this situation?
I think the employers that are doing it the best are constantly communicating with their employees regarding what their needs are at home, and how that reflect on their ability to be good employees. And so whether that means that you take a look at how productivity looks like during the day, as um, parents are still grappling with childcare and and kids going back to school. That's one thing, and also looking at what other what your other colleagues are doing. You might get some good ideas from another business, that your friend manages, and you can say, okay, they're doing it this way. Let's do it where we are. And I think with something like this, the more information you try to get and advice you try to get, whether it's from internally from your employees or from your colleagues, the better outcomes are going to bear fruit, so that you can manage this process most effectively.
Yeah, it sounds like the collaborative approach may be a good sharing of information. So you mentioned local guidelines. Where do we find our local guidelines?
So to take DC, for example, the mayor's office has a website dedicated to providing resources on uh, you know what the current status is in terms of um, levels of capacity and workplaces, particularly indoors, what the rules are that employees have to follow in terms of mask wearing or social distancing, whether it's if someone does get infected with COVID, what do you do as an employer, and what's your responsibilities to the government in terms of reporting um, or contact tracing. So I would say that you might want to start with your local, like your local official's office, whether it's the mayor, governor, or what have you, because of course, it's without what your city or state or county mandates is most important because that's where you do business. And you also want to look to CDC guidelines, or federal government guidelines, because they might have they might talk about things about, how long should someone be quarantining, and if you notice, with the CDC, for example, the number of days that someone has to quarantine after being exposed to COVID has decreased. It used to be 14 days. Now I think it's 10 days. In most instances. So you want to pay attention to that as well because that will impact the way you might make decisions to assess risk when someone's exposed in your workplace or had been exposed outside of work.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like most people are using the better safe than sorry on that, requiring people to have two negative tests.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, different places as they're opening up along the county and local guidelines, the employer still has a choice to keep their establishment on more of a strict.
Yep.
Yes. So I've been watching that as well. So what's going on with the vaccine? What do employers need to know?
So the essential question for many employers now is, do you mandate that people take the vaccine or do we not? And it's going to be a very delicate topic because you go into all sorts of things regarding the politics of the vaccine, for starters, also people's medical conditions that might affect their ability to take the vaccine or their comfort level with taking the vaccine. Um, and also the nature of the work you do, right? That can also impact the decision. And what I've been telling most of my clients is that if you're in a business where the likelihood of someone transmitting COVID or getting someone sick is high, then you probably want to mandate that people get the vaccine. So whether it's your medical offices or customer service oriented um, types of businesses where a lot of your employees are customer facing, probably in those situations you want to mandate vaccinations. Um, or and particularly if maybe you do work with a government entity and they're mandating that people are vaccinated to do to fulfill the government contract, right? So those are instances where you might want to mandate vaccinations. Now, of course, if someone uh, needs a reasonable accommodation and can't take the vaccine for whatever reason, or has a very strong uh, reason why they don't want to, you should take those into account on a case by case basis, while of course trying to be fair in terms of how you make decisions. But I would say that this is very sensitive when it comes to vaccines in general, and so you want to at least get the full story before you make a decision. Now, of course, in some instances, it will be unavoidable that you might have to stick to your position regarding mandating vaccines, but I would still encourage employers to at least hear someone out. And if you can put them in a different position or just have them just telework full time, so they don't have to be with other people, where they might feel where there's a risk that they could contract the virus, maybe you do that just so that you try to keep people happy and feel that they're being heard. But many employers fall into the category where you don't have to mandate it. Particularly if everyone's working from home or it's an office where you don't get many visitors, right? You don't necessarily have to mandate that people get the vaccine. You can strongly encourage it and and provide incentives for people to get it. If you want to particularly feel as if you're doing your part to society and getting as many people vaccinated so we can achieve herd immunity. But there is no pressure to have to mandate it if it's not necessary. And again, one of my big things is that with with decisions like this, particularly if it's not something that you have to um, mandate because of business reasons, it's always good to talk to employees. There's one organization I know where they could have made it mandatory, but they didn't. But the leadership took it upon themselves to talk openly about, they going out with their family to get vaccinated, and with the hopes that once the staff sees that leadership's getting vaccinated and other people are getting vaccinated, that they will feel more comfortable going out and getting the vaccine. And in large part, it's worked. That being a model of the, hey, I got it, didn't affect me, I'm fine now, it's not that scary, you should go out and do it too. And that can also be effective, particularly if you can find, particularly if there are ways that you can still keep people safe, just in case something bad were to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, it's sort of like the subtle "I voted" stickers. You're wearing that I voted and I early voted, and people start thinking, "Oh yeah, I need to vote. I want to be a sticker wearing person myself." So, we did see a lot of changes in the leave policies as COVID was taking its major toll on us last year. Do you think now that the vaccine is getting to herd mentality that some of those leave policies will tighten back up?
Maybe. Uh, I would say that it's already kind of started at the national level, where uh, emergency leave is now not mandatory, but you still get a tax credit if you do provide it. But I believe it's going to end this month actually. It's not permanent, or maybe later. I forget, but it's not permanent, and it's not mandatory. But if you do it, you can take advantage of the tax credit if you do provide emergency leave for anything related to COVID. That's at the national level. Certainly, there's still a larger conversation about the need for more access to paid medical leave, um, because COVID has revealed that there is a gap in our various laws and social safety nets when it comes to paid time off for medical reasons. And so I believe that many states and local governments are still going to have, uh, whether they're going to extend leave provisions they've adopted because of COVID, or if they had leave provisions that address paid medical leave before COVID, it might enhance them or strengthen them, because of what we experienced during COVID. So if you're an employer, whether in DC or in another part of the country, pay attention to what your local government is doing, um, whether it's at the state, county, or city level. You want to pay attention to what they're doing, because right now, I would say that paid time off would be very much a local issue. Uh, that might become a national issue at some point.
I see that. Okay, great. And then what about, we talk a lot about conversation and crucial conversations and communication in the workplace. What about, like, say it is a choice whether you get vaccinated, and there's people who are anti-vaxxers and there are people who are proudly sporting their "I got vaccinated" sticker. What do we see coming up on that front?
It hopefully nothing more than an interesting conversation.
Okay.
But certainly, there are people with strong opinions either way regarding whether or not you should get vaccinated or not. I think that this really falls in line with, uh, at the end of the day, it's a workplace, and so professionalism should always be the number one thing that everyone should aspire to. And so, even if you do have a conversation about vaccines, whether it's COVID-19 vaccine or vaccines in general, and you are speaking with someone who has a different opinion, doesn't mean you can have a conversation, right? People, coworkers have conversations about things over time where they might differ, but I think the main thing is that it should be professional, right? And it shouldn't get personal, and certainly you should not um, make decisions on someone's employment based off of their political views on the vaccine. Now, of course, political affiliation or viewpoints are not necessarily protected class, but you just don't want to set a precedent where you start making decisions on something like this purely based on how you view someone's stance on a politically charged issue. Unless it's something that you can squarely say there's a business reason. So if you have mandated that people get vaccinated and you have an employee that is violating your policy, then of course you all within your right based off of your policy to get rid of someone if they're actively violating your policy. That's different. You know, um, or if they might have said something publicly that reflects poorly on your organization, certainly you all in your right to protect your organization and make a decision on someone's employment. But if someone just simply voices that they are anti-vaccine or very much pro-vaccine, and you just don't agree with them, I just think it's poor form to make that person that to affect that person's employment because of that.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's sort of like anything that can become polarized, it's best to have a policy to where things can be communicated and accepted. All right, thank you for that.
Yep.
So I just want to share a few things about hybrid meetings. It's like we finally gotten the hang of virtual meetings for the most part, and then now we're having to go to hybrid meetings in some, especially in some parts of the country. I know our listeners are from all over the U.S. And sometimes even out of the country, so it's different where people are starting to have a lot more hybrid meetings with people in the office or in a conference space where the rest of the participants are online virtually via Zoom or GoToMeeting or one of the other video platforms. It's very crucial to put up the intention of the meeting. And if this is an intention to be an inclusive a meeting to where you're getting feedback from all the participants involved, it's going to take some extra preparation on the technology in order to get that feeling, and so that people can really feel like they're being part of the conversation and the conversation is being facilitated. So you're going to have more people and more technology in order to make an effective hybrid meeting. So this is just a high level overview right now. So definitely have somebody monitoring the chat, handling the on-site engagement, have microphones for anybody who needs to be talking, because the people that are logging in remotely are not going to be able to hear just people talking in the room and having a discussion. Also the audio, making sure that that's effective. It's been shown that people are pretty much okay not having video, but if they don't have audio, they're really like lost. They're really lost. And with everything in person and online, don't make it too long. Make stretch breaks, coffee breaks, meal breaks, whatever you need to do so that people's attention and healthy bodies are being being activated so that they're in their best mind to make good decisions and to participate fully. Um, this kind of tied back to Edgar. I know this was kind of toward the end of the conversation, but something triggered my mind there about that. What are you seeing as far as like technology being provided to employees during this time?
Yeah, it is run the gamut. I know that, for example, Slack has really become very popular as a way for teams to stay in touch with one another, or colleagues stay in touch with one another. Uh, Zoom, of course, has skyrocketed. Even like Microsoft Teams or Google Meet, there's just been a lot of different ways that people have engaged each other, both their employees, through virtual meetings. I would say that I attended a networking event where we didn't use Zoom. It was a thing called Wonder, or
Hmm.
something called Wonder, and I liked it because you can kind of see the whole space that you're in, and it was almost as if you were like in a bar where you can leave one circle and go into another circle, and start a new conversation with a new group. So it's very interesting, and I think right now the platform is free to use. I think, um, and I think it's a good alternative to the other platforms that we mentioned, because it's more for online social gatherings, as opposed to like a work meeting. So I believe that these platforms are here to stay.
Hmm.
It will be a very essential part of our lives, both whether it's professionally or your personal life. Because I think that a lot of people, uh, well, I think a lot of employers have realized that they can have productive companies where people are teleworking.
Hmm.
So, and I think for a lot of people, having the flexibility of working from home and being able to do other things or relocate to somewhere where you want to be close to family, or a part of the country where you feel more comfortable and still be able to keep your job somewhere else, is something that a lot of people like. And so, as the old saying goes, it's really hard to take away things from people when they get accustomed to something. So I think these technology are here to stay.
Yeah, I haven't been on Wonder yet. I've been on one called AirMeet and also Remo. I've been on a couple of Remo meetings, and they're very interesting. So very interesting to have a little. It's like you have a little video game character
Right,
that's
right.
that's you. Awesome. Well, we went to some high level stuff today, and then we started to kind of touching on things that would be specific to each type of company or each leader. And Edgar and I are always available to our community to actually get into some nitty gritty with you and have a confidential conversation about your needs. These are our calendar links, and when I post this, there will be a QR code to go to a page with both of our links, and we're always happy to talk to everybody. So, any parting thoughts for this episode?
Parting thought would be that you know it it's been a crazy year, and I can certainly sympathize with employers that have to constantly rethink how they're managing their people and how they're um, adapting their policies and procedures. I'll just say hang in there. It seems, I think collectively, a lot more people are feeling optimistic, given that there are a lot more vaccine being more accessible, and more people getting vaccinated, and really starting to think about trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. So I would just encourage people to continue being flexible and being nimble, and that we're almost there. We're almost there, and just hang in there.
That's great. Yes, hang in there, everybody, and stay tuned for our next episodes of HR and Leadership Coffee Talk. So, till then, stay safe and see you soon.
Take care, everybody. So, almost